Alright, here we are for a very much requested tutorial. I've had quite a few people actually ask me to make this, and I've been putting it off, but we'll go ahead and do it. Now, with most of my tutorials, I do them all live. This one is no different, so as I'm talking, I am doing things in the game, so you might hear me slip up once or twice. Anyway, let's get right into it, because this is meant to be a very quick tutorial to introduce you to the game without spending an hour of your time doing so. So, if you're new to the game, here are some of the basics. We're going to go left to right on all these. There's tons of buttons, and I'm going to do my best to explain each one as quickly as possible. Button number one is, of course, your country's flag. And in this case, we're Norway today. The shortcut for that is Q. If you click on your flag, you get a pop-up that shows you all sorts of information, such as the name of your prime minister, dictator, tyrant, whoever happens to be in charge of your country, your national focus, which we'll come back to in a moment, the type of government you have, which in this case is Norway, is democratic, and they have certain penalties and certain bonuses, and the majority or minorities or whatever the makeup of your political system. On this one, it's 96% democratic with a little bit of communist and fascist influence in the mix and nothing else. Up next is laws and government. Laws and government determine how your recruitment is. For example, how many people can you recruit out of your population? How much of your resources are you planning to export? The more you export, the more bonuses you get, but the less resources you have. What kind of economy do you want? Civilian economy, for instance, is a lot of your production is going towards toys and gadgets and all sorts of things that make people happy, not towards war, obviously. As world tension goes up, you can change this civilian economy to early mobilization, partial mobilization, war economy, even total mobilization, which hurts a lot of manpower, but makes it so that your country is really geared toward war. Okay, up next, political advisors, of which you have 3. Each political advisor will determine how your country shifts throughout history. For example, if I put in a fascist guy, demagogue, or what is he called? Yeah, fascist demagogue. Daily fascism support 1% or plus 0.1. Is that 0.1%? I think it's 1% if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, every day the fascism support in my country would go up by that much. And it sounds like not very much, but it accumulates, and before you know it, you're a fascist. Popular figurehead gives you stability, which helps your country operate better. There's communists, captain of industry. Anyway, all these do different things for your country. If you're looking to change your country's ideology from the start, you definitely want to put in one of these figureheads. Okay, up next is tank designer, ship designer, aircraft designer. All 3 of these determine what kind of performance your tanks, ships, and aircraft will have. In some countries, there's just a single designer. For instance, Norway just has 1 tank designer, 1 ship designer, but it does have multiple choices in aircraft. I could get a naval aircraft, which gives me bonuses to my naval bombers, light aircraft, which gives me bonuses to my fighters, and so on. So that is that. Up next is material designer, which gives you bonuses for either infantry, artillery, or motorized in this case. We've got our industry dude, who is... let's see here, industry concern, which gives us industrial research speed, electronics research speed over here, and of course research speed for refining over here. Then up next is theorists. Theorists give you experience right up here, Army, Navy, or Air experience, which is important. We'll talk about that probably in another tutorial, but you definitely want to get those going. Then Chief of Army could give you a little offensive or defensive boost to your infantry. Army Organization gives you an overall organization bonus. Chief of Navy, and I'm not going to explain each of these, you can just mouse over them. Chief of Air Force, Military High Command is kind of like your political advisors. There's 3 of them, so you can sort of mix it up the way you want to as your country, and you can choose up to 3 of these. Now, the way you choose any of these is you get political power. Political power is gained over time. For example, we're playing medium difficulty, which gives us 2 political power per day roughly here in Norway. So I would just have to wait for a month or 2 to have enough political power to assign one of these things. They aren't meant to all be assigned right from the get-go. Okay, up next, national focus. If I click on that, I have access to a national focus tree. What that does is it determines which direction my country is going as far as bonuses go, as far as its way in history. Now, with Norway, it has a generic tree. This is the tree you'll see for most small countries. Whereas Germany, for instance, if I were to open up Germany's, you'll see they have all kinds of neat stuff. 4-year plan. They've got Rhineland, which, if you know your history, you know what that is. You oppose Hitler. If you decide you want to get rid of Hitler and revive the Kaiserreich, there's a route you can go there. And there are many, many mods for this game. If you're new to the game, you'll discover within the first hour that modding the game is a huge deal in this community. Okay, so up next is... Oh, and by the way, if you mouse over something, it will tell you what it does. I don't know how many times I've told new players, just hover your mouse over what you're curious about, and it will tell you exactly what it does. Always. If I hover my mouse over here, I add 3 building slots, 3 naval dockyards, and some Navy experience if I finish doing this focus. The next one, I add 2 100% research bonuses for all those different researches, and so on. So everything can pop up by just hovering your mouse over it, including these buttons, including all these things above here. Everything has a pop-up tooltip because the guys who made Hearts of Iron, Paradox, they knew that it's a very complicated game. They want to make it as simple as possible. So there are tooltips that pop up everywhere. Okay, up next, decisions. Decisions are things like improve worker conditions, which will improve the stability of my country, or propaganda, which I can't do because there's no war, there's nobody doing anything particularly violent right now in the world, but that can change once Germany starts being aggressive. There are some countries have specific decisions that can change history. For example, restore the Kalmar Union. If I control all Swedish and Danish states, Norway can become Scandinavia. Which, I mean, it is part of Scandinavia, but it can become an official country of those 3. And if I have Finland as well as Denmark, then I can have the actual Nordic Council, which is all of the Nords, and basically bring back the Vikings. So there's all kinds of cool, fun little side things you can do here with decisions. Ban fascism, ban communism, but those have negative effects too. Alright, on to research. Research is pretty straightforward. You click on it, it will show you your available researches. Also over here is a button letting you know that not all my researches are being done. So I can go in here, find something that is in a time zone that I have not passed. Currently it's 1936, so everything 1936 and before does not get penalized if I want to research it. So let's say I want to research support weapons, Lane Doctrine. Let's say I want to research superior firepower doctrine, and let's do engineering because it gives me a research bonus in the future. All those do not penalize me. However, if I was to choose something like, for example, atomic research, you can see right here it's going to take 1,464 days because it's 4 years ahead of its historical time. Because nobody was working on the A-bomb in 1936. That came a little bit later, although there was atomic... Anyway, we won't get into that. We don't need to get into history for this, but we're going to go ahead and research. Okay, so there we go. All of our research is chosen. Currently, we're at a 5% bonus thanks to our export focus. If I changed over to free trade, it would be 10%. Alright, up next is diplomacy. Diplomacy is your, well, it's very straightforward. It's your relationship with your neighbors. You can click around to your different neighbors or to people across the world, whatever, and you can do different things with them. For instance, you can ask for military access. You can offer military access, ask for docking rights, offer docking rights, and so on down the line. License production basically means you want to create something that maybe you don't have researched in your country, so you want to pay another country. Like, let's say, as Norway, I want to make... let's see here. Oh, that's Sweden. Sweden sucks. Let's do Germany. There we go. Germany, they're not going to allow it, but we'll still just show you. Let's say I want to make a bunch of BF-109s, which are a pretty decent fighter, and Norway obviously doesn't have those. I can click on this, and I can go ahead and hit send, and Germany will allow me to make those. They won't in this case because they're going to invade me one day, but if I was friendly with them, they would. And in fact, you can even mouse over why they won't, and it will tell you exactly why. The German Reich has strategic reasons to be hostile to Norway. Well, if you know your history, you'll know why that is. They plan to take me one day, and their opinion of me is negative as well, which that can be improved with Where is it? Improve relations right there, which I can't do because I don't have enough political power. But you can see where I'm going with that. Okay, so that's diplomacy. Another way to open the diplomacy screen is to click on a country and then click on their flag. That brings that up. And okay, up next is trade. Now trade is very important. Let's say I want to produce... okay, I gotta make sure it's something that I don't have resources for. So let's go ahead and produce a transport plane. And we're gonna not produce support equipment. We'll come back to this screen in a second. I'm just doing this for the tutorial. And okay, this requires 4 rubber and it requires 6 aluminum. Norway has 6 aluminum, but it doesn't have 4 rubber. So if I go to my trade screen, you can see there's a deficit right here of 4 rubber. I just click on rubber. I click on one of the countries that produces it. Since the UK is probably going to be my friend later, I can click on them. And automatically it sets the number of factories I need in order to get 8 rubber. It won't do it in any smaller increments than that. So I'll have a surplus of rubber when this is done. Each factory represents 8 resources. So that all looks good. I just hit send, and I can increase that, by the way, but there's no need to. You don't need an abundance of anything except perhaps oil. And then send. And now, if I allow it to go one turn, there we go. Now, you'll see that my rubber is 4 in the positive because I'm trading with them. We are importing 8 rubber of 8 requested. Okay, so up next is construction. Oh, by the way, one other thing. You might want to trade for oil if your country is suffering from not enough fuel, because fuel comes from oil, obviously, if you know anything about anything. Okay, so up next is construction. Construction is how you get your country economically out of the dumps. Most countries are not in good shape in 1936 because if you know your history, this is when the Great Depression was wrapping up as Germany was mobilizing. So I would want to build, for example, a civilian factory. Now, if you mouse over any of these, they'll tell you what they do. For example, infrastructure are like highways. The more you have in your country, the more resources you get out of wherever you happen to lay those roads. So, for instance, when my roads are done, I'll have 2 more aluminum coming out of this province, 7 more aluminum coming out of this, 10 more tungsten coming out of here, and 6 more steel. That's all really terrific. There is no bonus to this province, but I could build a road. That way I have infrastructure in my entire country and my people don't suffer supply issues. You can't get supplies to the front line if everyone has to march through a bunch of mountains and there's no roads. Alright, so civilian factories are what you're going to want to build generally at the beginning. And if you hold shift and left click, it will stack as many as possible on given said province. So say I want to build a bunch of civilian factories and then maybe a few military factories because, man, I've only got 2. That's just not enough. So I can go military factory, hold shift, click, and now I've got 2 of them queued up, 1 civilian, 2 civilian, and a bunch of roads. Let's say I want to build the civilian factories first. All I do is hold shift, click on this green arrow, boom, it's moved to the top. Boom, that's moved to the top, and that's moved to the top. But I want to build my civilian factories first, so now I'll just regular left click my military factory and move it down a couple spots. There we go. So over time, this is going to build. It says my next civilian factory will be done October 7th, 1937. The reason that's so long, as you can see, is because civilian economy is active, and it's a 30% penalty. Civilian economy, if you recall, is back here on our first option, right there. And we can't change that until the world gets more violent, or unless we become communist or fascist, which we're not in this case. Okay, so up next is production. This is, you just saw this earlier, this is where we produce things like infantry equipment for our soldiers, support equipment for our soldiers, towed artillery for our soldiers, and towed air if we want. None of these will be produced right now because we don't have any factories assigned to them. Even if I remove one of the factories from my plane, I still don't have enough to fill these orders. That's why we're building factories. Okay, so production is done to supply your troops. Also, it lets you build ships. Convoys give you the ability to trade with your neighbors as well as transport your troops overseas. Coastal defense ships, all the rest of these are pretty straightforward. Just mouse over them and they'll tell you what they do. Destroyers are small, cruisers are medium, battleships are large. We don't have any battleships. and then submarines are submarines. Okay, up next, Naval Repair queue. The more naval stations you assign to repair, the more will be used if your ships come back to port in order to repair. Right now, 1 out of the 1 available can be converted to repair a ship. So if a ship comes for repair, whatever's being produced by my Navy is going to be held for a moment while the dockyard repairs my ship. Okay, up next, recruit and deploy. This is where you create armies. Here we can hit train, and our infantry will pop up. We can add units to that list, but you'll notice that I have no manpower available, so they're not going to build at all. In fact, if I queue 1 up, I've only got 5,000 manpower, and boom, it's gone. And if you mouse over this, it'll tell you you need 9,300 men, 910 infantry equipment, and 30 support equipment just to build 1 division. So we'll just get rid of that. And if, let's say you want to edit this, or not edit this, but yeah, you want to edit your division in order to make it more powerful. You can click edit, and there's some really good videos out there on the internet about the perfect unit composition, so I'll let you find that yourself. Generally, it's agreed upon a combat width of 20 is preferred for the perfect division. So there we go, that would be combat width of 20 if I added 1 more infantry. I can add in things like recon company, support artillery, anti-air, all sorts of stuff to augment my unit. However, the more stuff I add on, the less organized they become. They recover slower. They're heavier, meaning you can't do as large of a invasion, Normandy Day, and supply usage is increased as well. However, a lot of the other stats are increased, such as attack, defense, air attack, all that stuff. So you feel free to play with your unit composition all you want. And like I said, there are plenty of videos out there that will explain all sorts of really cool stuff that you can do with units to make them powerful or make them very specialized. Last but not least is logistics. This one is not used very much, I've seen. It's just to keep tabs on how much equipment you have in your country. And I'm creating all of these. That's why they're on the list, even though if I mouse over it, you can see I have none available. I don't have any built, but I am building them. Well, I will be once I have a factory for it. Infantry equipment. I currently have a deficit of 2,927 units. So my infantry equipment, you can actually see right here, 2,927. It's got the little health symbol, meaning that's how much I need just to reinforce my current troops and my... yeah, I don't even have one in training. So that's how much I need just to reinforce my troops that I have here on the board. So that's the explanation of all the buttons. And up next are these little buttons, which are actually repeats of the buttons I showed you. For instance, free dockyards, showing that we have a dockyard available, so we can build our convoy, for instance. National focus, we don't have a national focus. That was that thing we talked about earlier. So let's just say industrial effort. Now that goes away. The unassigned divisions lets me know I have divisions, these guys, who are not assigned to an army. They're just standing around with no commanding officer. So I can scroll out. In this case, if you're in Russia, you'll have to just do this multiple times because it's a huge country. And I can drag over. Now I've got 10 divisions selected for my whole country's army. Down here, new army. Boom, they are all in an army now. They don't have a leader, though. I need to assign somebody. There we go. General Carl Gustav Fleischer? Sure. He has 3 attack, 4 defense. That's really good. Two skills in planning, and 2 skills in logistics. So you can see what the bonuses are for those levels by mousing over them. 10% defense bonus, 7.5% attack. He's also a winter specialist, so my guys take less winter attrition, and their reconnaissance is increased because he's a trickster. This is a really good guy, and he's level 4. So we can go ahead and just click him. He's now assigned. He is now in command of my whole army. So if I click his portrait down here, everyone is selected. This is like any strategy game where you like control 1 to create a group, but instead you create a group by hitting the little plus down here. Now I can give my troops orders such as front line and put them on the front line with Sweden. It automatically creates that front line across all of Sweden, and he will do his best to stretch his 10 divisions across the line. If I unpause, there they go. Woo! Really fast. Of course, if this was real time, they'd be marching over mountains and quite unhappy that I just gave them an order to march on foot across my entire snow-covered country. It is January in Norway, after all. There they go. Alright, so they spread out best they could. There's more than 10 provinces, so they didn't spread out perfectly, but they're doing the best they can. and that's where creating more divisions will come in handy. Okay, so let's see. Is there anything else that you really need to know? There's naval stuff such as giving your navy orders, but there's better videos, and I don't need to waste your time on that. This tutorial is just to give you basic explanation of the buttons. A couple other quick tutorial points. There are 3 types of views here on the right. There's the Army view, which we're already looking at. That's the view you're going to be in 90% of the time. There is the... Oh, sorry. Let me try that again. Not the Army view. These are the Army stats. Tells you who's in your Army, where they are. Same with Navy. Same with Air Force. We have 18 tactical bombers. Not a lot. Sorry, the views are down here. Excuse me. So we're in Army view, that's what we're looking at now, which is your world map, generally speaking. Next is the Strategic Navy view. Now you can see the different sea regions, the North Sea, Eastern North Sea, Eastern English Channel, and you can see our ships, of course, there. Then, of course, there's the Air view. Air view shows your different regions that your air can operate in. And if you mouse over your air, you'll see there's a circle around it that indicates his operating range. So if I told him to bomb, he can bomb anywhere within that circle, but nowhere beyond. So let's say I wanted to bomb northern Scandinavia. I could reposition my bomber on pause, and there he goes. Now he's in position to bomb at least half of northern Scandinavia. So that's why it's very important to, of course, build airports, air bases rather, wherever you want to operate your aircraft. Alright, there we go. So that's those view modes. There's other modes like supply area, which shows where your supplies are, terrain, which just shows the type of terrain, although that one I'd never use because you can just see the type of terrain right there by looking at it. Oops. You can see the resistance map mode. This is important if you're playing Germany. You can see where people are resisting you. You can see resource map mode, which shows what resources are available in every province. Looks like Sweden has a lot of steel. Sure would be nice to invade them and take it. And infrastructure map mode. The lighter green it is, the better infrastructure you have. Obviously Oslo is the capital of Norway, so it's got better infrastructure, but when you move up here into the mountains, not so much. And if you mouse over it, like I said earlier, mousing over shows you everything. Infrastructure 3, that's not good. Infrastructure 4, that's a little better. 5 and 6, so it gets better as we get closer to the capital. Factions map mode. For instance, Axis is here in Germany, Allies is UK. Comintern is the Soviets. The Allies are obviously the big player at the moment because UK has a lot of colony states. It's got what will one day be Egypt. It's got it's got South Africa, you know, so on and so forth. Australia and New Guinea and such. So as the game goes on, other people will join the Axis, other people will join the Allies, other people will join the Comintern, and you can use this faction map mode to get a overall view of who's in what faction currently. And there's other factions aside from the 3 main ones. You can create your own faction later on after a certain focus is done. Now there is other stuff here like not displaying the day and night loop. If I turn this on, you can see let's see, I don't know. Anyway, you can see night and day. I don't use it ever because it's kind of annoying. But you can see, for instance, it's 1900 hours. I turned on the night and day thing. 3 in the morning. There, now you can see the reflection of the sun. And now it is 10 in the morning, so it's daytime. If I were to wait till night, it's dark again. If you like that, you can do that. I usually keep it turned off personally. Shortcut N. Displaying fog of war, you turn that on and off. And displaying radars, you can turn that on and off. At this era in history, there aren't really many radars. I think there might be one in London, perhaps. But that changes over the game, of course, as technology goes. Alright, so that is all of the buttons that you really need to be aware of, at least when you start the game. One other thing to be aware of is world tension. You don't have to click it, but if you look here, the higher the tension goes, the more you can actually conscript, the more you can change your economy to be war economy. See right here, it says more than 50% war support. Well, if you go up to war support, it says war support is... doesn't say because there's 0% world tension, but as world tension increases, war support increases too. It's the equivalent of, hey, the world is on fire, maybe we should get involved and not just bury our heads in the sand. That's what that means. manpower, factories, all this stuff. As I said, mouse over anything you need to learn about. It is all there. And that is it. Hopefully I was able to get this done in a very short amount of time and your ears aren't bleeding from me talking super fast. And I will see you guys on the battlefield.